Oh, so you did mention Siberia, and in the book, your family is taken to a slave labor camp in Siberia. Now, when I think of the word Siberia, and I think when most people think of that, we think of images of a lot of snow and things very cold and isolation. Is that the way it was when you got there, Helen?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
It was snow. There was an awful lot of snow, and somehow people managed to live through the winter. Winter started in October and ended in May, and people had to go to work, and like our father was cutting timber, cutting trees in the forest. They had to walk quite a distance, because in the first place we were in special, it was a kolkhoz. So kolkhoz was a farmland, and outside of the kolkhoz was big heavy forest when they were cutting the trees. They were getting up very early and trudged to that snow and worked all day long, and after that they came back. And
did you have to use the food that you brought with you?
Absolutely.
Was that supplemented with anything else, or was?
Well, person who was working was getting, depends how much he produced, a certain amount of bread, usually half a pound of dark bread, and I guess they were giving a little bit for children, and there was a store, but it was always empty, and you very seldom could find anything in it, could buy anything in it. You couldn't buy bread, you couldn't buy sugar, you couldn't buy. There was nothing. Local people were saying, when the river starts going, in other words, when
the ice melts?
When ice will melt, everything will come.
Oh.
Nothing ever came.
Oh.
And they knew it, because the people in that place where when we came first in Russia, were the Polish people from, actually, those were very wealthy people from western part of Russia, eastern part of Poland. And that 1920 war was about that border. And the people said that they were, Russians were first, or Polish were, and they were just changing hands. And they were praying that Polish will stay. Unfortunately, they didn't, because later on, the border somehow was, I don't know exactly how it was established, but those people found themselves, and it was pure Polish country.
Well, Helen, let me, I want to switch gears just for a minute, because I'm getting the time cue that, and there are a couple questions I want to be sure we get to. I understand that when the family was there for a while, so it's the mother, the father, 3 children. You are 2 of the 3 children.
Yes.
And at some point, you are broken up. The family is dispersed. And Helen, where did you go? Where were you sent?
That was after amnesty, when when Germany attacked Russia. The Russians decided that the people who are in prison in Russia, Polish people, can be good soldiers. And after amnesty, they gave us freedom. We could move. We could go south. We could travel. Before we couldn't. So at that time, when after amnesty, my father left the place where we were living, and went south when the Polish army was being created. So that put an awful strain on my mother.
Oh, I'm sure.
He sent us a telegram and said that pack and leave Posiłek right away before river freezes.
So So you left, and
the father was first, and then mother and three of us.
And some of you, I understand, you wound up in Africa, of all
but
places.
Then it was when we were in Afghanistan.
Uzbekistan.
In Uzbekistan,
yeah.
and then
Uzbekistan.
Africa.
That's where we were started being separated, because mother gave him to cadets. It was young
soldiers battalions.
Young soldiers. They knew that they wanted to take as many children out of Russia as possible, so they created an orphanage and cadets and eunuchs, young soldiers. So mother, just to save him, brought him to cadets. She didn't give my younger brother. She could have. People were leaving children in orphanage just to save them.
Oh gosh.
And well, I was staying with her, but for the time being, I was lost because I lost the train, and I was separated from my family.
Oh my gosh.
My mother had a very difficult time.
That had to have been. I mean, I simply can't imagine what that was like. But we don't have a lot of time left, and I just want to. A couple of things, Henry. You are wearing on your jacket lapel there. What I understand is the Siberian Cross.
Yes, it is.
And what is it? And what is it for? And how did you receive it?
Well, that was basically we didn't have to do anything, just basically surviving Siberia.
Well, that's big.
That was big. That's why they gave a cross, and the cross was given to us by the Polish president, who is now who is dead, who is deceased, who died on a trip to Smolensk in Russia to celebrate or commemorate 70th anniversary of the Katyn forest massacre, where Russians shot 22,000 of Polish officers and Polish intellectuals. And they were going out there to celebrate this, and they were added to the
not celebrate
or to honor, to memorialize.
To memorialize.
Yes. And I understand he signed. You have the little book that we have up here. He signed that, and from what I understand from your daughter, who is the author of the book Maps and Shadows, she mentioned that the president was to sign 80 or so, and wound up only signing a few, but one of them was yours.
He only signed about 7 out of the 80 crosses that were supposed to be awarded, and they were awarded in New Jersey at the 70th anniversary of our deportation to Siberia.
I want to just to mention for anyone who is in the audience right now, if you're just joining us, I am talking with Helen Zasada and Henry Jopeck. They are two of the people who are featured in the fictional biography called Maps and Shadows by Krisha Jopeck. And there is something in the book that is that has been fictionalized, just very, very minor things. I believe in the book Krisha had you carrying a dictionary that one of the things that you packed when you left, and I understand why she did that. She is such a poet, and I'm going to talk with her on another show. But I am trying to get a handle on this very large picture, this huge experience, and bringing it down. And after when things finally are at a point where the family is reunited, and I understand there's a lot of trauma and everything in between, but who in the family is eager to talk about the experiences, and who is reluctant to say anything, even if that definition applies? Well, for each of you, Henry, were you eager to talk about what happened with people, or were you silent?
I was not afraid. I was always ready to tell the whole story, and I was I was not the type to keep silent.
Why do you think the story is important to be told?
Because there's so many people that do not know what happened to those out of the 1.5 million people. There's only 140,000 people that General Anders, who was our commander in Russia, managed to practically smuggle to Persia, and from then on out we spread over there. Helen went to Africa, I went to Middle East, my father went to Italy, but there was more than 1 million people that are still unaccounted for from all the people that were deported.
Oh, Henry. And Helen, when everybody gets together, is this a subject that you are eager to talk about, or are you more quiet?
Oh no, when we got together, that's fine. We were happy when war ended and civilian camps, like our camp in Tengeru in Africa, were being liquidated. People who had somebody in Polish army, brothers, sister, father, could go to England. People who didn't have anybody had to go either return to Poland, or if they were healthy, they could go to Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, but they had to be perfectly healthy, and not many of them were healthy.
I imagine too that the whole, there had to be a lot of trauma, just physical trauma, from the wear on the body from going up from a place like Siberia, and then coming to Africa, coming to a desert. I mean, what that had to have done, the toll that had to have taken.
Yeah, you know, actually, there was no trauma. You were just doing what you were told, going where you were told to go, and we were practically deprived of our freedom and everything. But everybody tried desperately to get on that train that was going to Krasnovodsk and later on to Persia.
I think when I read the book, I kept thinking resilience. That it had to have been such resilience. I mean, in order to survive.
Yes, it has been, and it's amazing what people can go, how people cling to life when it's threatened. And
I hope no one ever has to go.
If we were 2 weeks longer in Russia, we would starve.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Well, there was divine providence operating there on some level.
Yes.
I want to, I'm getting the signal, unfortunately, that we are out of time, and I want to thank you both very much for coming. Your stories are conveyed, Henry and Helen's stories are conveyed in the book, Maps and Shadows by Krysia Jopeck, which is published by Aquila Polonica, a publisher specializing in the Polish experience of World War II. You can see this interview, and you'll be able to see my interview with Krysia if you go to YouTube.com, and you can search Zita Christian Full Bloom and search the last name Jopeck, J-O-P-E-K, for this interview. And I invite you, please do so. This is an important story. It needs to be told. Thanks very, very much for coming tonight and sharing this story. Let me also thank my FB crew, and especially Jessica Batchelor, who is filling in for us tonight. Jessica, thanks very much. Thank you, too, in the audience. I say this every week, and I mean it sincerely. I do know the value of time, and I appreciate that once again you chose to share an evening with me. Thank you.
Full Bloom is brought to you in part by the following: